Hello, everybody. I'm Ed Parcaut of Helping the Brave. And first thing I want to thank goodness Navy won last weekend. Let's bring in our guest this for today. Johnny, is it Gilpen?
Yes, that's
Navy
correct.
asked you. All right. Yeah, go Navy. Thank God. Not last weekend. It
Yes.
was close. It was real close. I thought we were going to lose there for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
last year
yeah.
OU played Navy, and that was the only game I had to check. Who was I going to root for, OU or Navy? And I had to, that was a close one, but I rooted for Navy.
That's good. Johnny, I only ask one question every week, that the same thing. What service and why?
Navy. Well, I was in Oklahoma National Guard first, then the Navy. Wanted to be a in the medicine field, and I went to the Army, and they said they weren't taking any prior guard, and the Navy was.
Wow. So National Guard is part of the Army, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I know it's not exact because my son's in the Army, and of course when he finished boot camp and everything else, and then he was making fun of the National Guard, but I'm like, it's still you guys. But so you joined the Navy, you were corpsman. How long were you in the Navy?
I was in there almost 6 years, not quite 6 years, 5.5.
All right. And I mean, I know more about you than that because I researched you before the show. Why did you leave the Navy?
I had a bad day working for Uncle Sam, and so one of those bad days that happens, and they medically sent me down the road and told me I couldn't play anymore.
I think you couldn't play corpsman anymore.
Yeah, I couldn't play corpsman anymore. I didn't realize exactly. We had a helicopter crash and lost a bunch of guys, and I was involved in part of the rescue and recovery, and didn't realize it at the time what all was happened, but my lungs and stuff got burnt pretty bad.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
It's part of the job.
No, I mean, I understand that as a corpsman, what you do and stuff you get involved. I was stationed at Camp Pendleton, but at the hospital, not out with the green side. But I still relate more to Marines than I do anything else because I never went regular Navy ever. I got out 5 years, 5 months, and 14 days, but who was counting?
Were you a corpsman?
I was a corpsman, yeah. But
okay.
then,
Perfect.
Yeah. Then I went to physical therapy school, and then came back to Camp Pendleton again. And then I did a lot of burn patients, stroke, all that stuff. And I saw a lot of stuff. So when I was done to get out, I didn't realize how much it affected me till a long time later.
Yeah. So afterwards, I just started having shortness of breath and different things, and then some other issues. And so when they medically discharged me, and then now I'm 100% just on my lungs alone. So yeah, I had a lot of downstream effect as time has gone by. I didn't realize just how much bad stuff is in a burning CH-46.
Yeah, it would be amazing how much stuff is in there burning. So when you first got medically discharged, retired or whatever, did they give you 100% at that time?
No, they didn't. I ended up with 50%.
They just didn't realize, because did it get worse over time, or was it as bad from then? It's just they didn't, because I know what year did you get out?
99.
Okay, so I got out in 90, and it's probably the same as 90 as 99. They didn't care. I'm not saying they ever cared, but you were done. If they couldn't use you anymore, you're out. We don't care about you. Move on.
No, and they didn't really know what to do with this. They sent me to Pensacola Naval Hospital, and so when I got there, they worked with me. They sent me on basically instructor type duty for a while, and then just things went by, and so they're like, yeah, here's your opportunity, here's your med board, see ya, here's some money, apply for your benefits. Got my 50%. I had some what I know now is some ulnar deviation, ulnar issues in my hand from some other nerve injuries that I had in my spine. And so I got out, went back to school in voc rehab. Didn't think too much more about it as time progressed, and stuff kept getting worse as time went on by. Had spinal injuries, knee injuries, ended up having a TBI that now I know what was problems that I didn't realize. I got into school I tried to go back to PA school. They told me your first time at college was really, really bad. My degree was pool hall, study hall, and alcohol. Very little study hall. I went to college on a rodeo scholarship. And so I went back to get a degree in biostatistics and epidemiology. And we had a class, and everybody, about 50% of the class, got caught cheating. And I was walking down the hallway, and my instructor, she was probably now she's probably not as old as I'm getting older, but she looked like she was very old at the time. And she was standing there, and she always wore 3 pair of glasses, one on the top of her head, one on the bridge of her nose, and one hanging around her necklace. And she said, "Mr. Gilpen, we need to discuss your test." And I said, "Dr. Neese, I didn't cheat." She goes, "Oh, that's very obvious." And so she figured out that it was statistics, and it was a class. And so I'd done the numbers, and the number that I came up with, I had gotten that answer right, and I explained that answer perfect. But when I was doing all my numbers, I'd gotten them all discombobulated. And so she gave me the answer, what was the right answer, and I explained that right. And so I figured out numbers I couldn't add, and I was having issues there. And so she went and we got tested, and this was 2003. So they were first starting to have guys come back with TBIs, and went to a TBI aspect, and they're like, "Hey, did you ever have like head injuries?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And so that's when they started finding out then. And a little bit while later, had started having other issues and endocrine problems. And that's when they did a study and found out my hypothalamus was all pituitary, everything was all messed up. So I don't have any of my endocrine system working right. So I just happened to catch it at a right time. I was at a university that had a VA attached to it and was doing a lot of different studies. But luckily, that professor, she caught it and said, "Hey, something's not right." She goes, "You have the ability, the understanding, but you're not catching certain things." And then I still have the ability where I skip words, and I'll be talking, and sometimes I'm working with new docs, and they think maybe I'm drunk or something. I'll know that this is a mic, right? I know you talking to it. I know it picks up my voice. I know that it's black. I know it's got a blue thing on it. And you'll go, "That's a mic." "Oh yeah." But I can't, so the phases and stuff there. So, and it's just part of it. Now, I've learned to work with it. So it is what it is.
How did you get through school? Because you're a PA now, for people who don't know, you're a physician's assistant. It's amazing how many corpsmen become PAs.
Well, the first three, there was 4 corpsmen that were in the first PA class at Dukin. One of them dropped out, and he went on and became I don't think he became a priest. I think he became a chaplain though. But the first 3 were Navy corpsmen. And what's one thing about PAs, we can trace our roots back to the military 100%. And the doc who put it together had been in World War II, and he had known about the fast track doctor program that they had built in World War II, and they took that program, and that's what designed it. So the very first PAs were all military. Now less than 2% are start from the military. So a flip-flop there. But yeah, so how did I get through it? Hyperbarics medicine was a life changer for me. My wife, great, amazing person, great friends, great people who helped me in learning how to study. Just different techniques. I learned, I wish osmosis. I wish I could lay my head on the book, but it didn't work real well. Just a lot of, going back to school at 46 as a PA was very difficult, but just learning different habits, different study habits. I made it. I mean,
so how long have you been a PA now?
This is going on 7 years.
Okay.
I worked as an epidemiologist before that. And I think probably the skill sets that I learned doing biostatistics and epidemiology helped. And everybody's like, you're biostats and epidemiology and you can't do numbers. I'm like, no, but I can program logically. I learned after that class, that was the last class, the one that the teacher said, where she identified my deficiencies. Everything else after that was computer programming. So I had to be able to think about it logically, identify the problems. And so I could program, come up, I didn't have to do the numbers itself. I just had to be able to plug and play. And the hard part, most people can't identify and understand what the numbers mean. And I could do that.
All right. So once you became a PA, where'd you work?
Or did you? Yeah. So I did an emergency medicine fellowship through Team Health, and I started on March 1st, 2020. What a time to start, right?
Right.
And so I finished my fellowship, and then I went to work for the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center, the Level 1 Adult Trauma Center. And then I've worked there, and then I've been doing pediatric emergency medicine for the last 3.5 years.
Wow. So you do that besides, so we started talking about benefits and other stuff before we got started here, and I want to get into that. So you're still working. How many hours a week do you work?
Lots. So I do 10 hours a month or 10 days a month in the ER now. So I pull 10 shifts a month. That's 0.75. And then, I'm very lucky. I was a Tillman scholar. The Pat Tillman Foundation paid for me to go to school. So I graduated debt free. So I don't have student loan debt like most of my colleagues. And so I've been able to.
That if you're 100%, your student loan debt goes away?
Yeah. It does. That's how I had a little bit left over from undergrad, and that took care of that. But I've been at 100% now for 12 years, 13.
So that's the question. When people go back to school and they get more, does it go away after that or only the first time?
I can honestly say that I know people that have, and it does.
Yeah.
It depends on how they look at it. Some it does. I don't know if it does for everybody, but I wouldn't recommend it because sooner or later it probably is going to give out. But I found that there's enough programs out there like the Tillman Foundation and other things vets can go to school on. But so I started 2.5 years ago, 3 years. I've been helping vets get their benefits now for over 10 years. But on basically the same side like you're on, trying to figure it out. But I had the opportunity to go to work for Veterans Evaluation Services as a CMP examiner. It's been great. I really love, I always say doing pediatric emergency medicine is like taking care of Marines again, except for the kids don't cry as much and they don't need as many crayons. But the mentality is about the same.
Funny thing about that, the other night I was with my daughter who works at a memory care place, and she gave some Marines crayons the other day, even though they can do, I'm like, how did you know that? And she's like, because I listened to what you guys talk about. Okay.
And but now on the other side, just vets are just big kids anyway. Right. And so I think working with these guys, I'm pretty easy to find on the internet, and I have so many Facebook and different things. Guys find me. And so when they do find me, I've heard so many guys say, hey, I got my 100%, or you got me to 50% or 30%, whatever. And so it's a very, very rewarding job on that aspect. So I do that 5-6 days a month, sometimes more. I travel I spent 85 days in Key West last summer working, doing it. So I travel to Colorado, Oklahoma, Florida,
Why do you travel there?
Why? Do CMP exams.
Oh, CMP exam. Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now let's talk about that, because I didn't know much about it until I had to go through my process. And here's my story. So I go through all the CMP exam. I'm at 92, rounded down to 90, but they didn't look at my PTSD. They denied it because I didn't realize you could keep uploading the stuff through the process. Because I got diagnosed with PTSD after I put my package in, because I only had a year. I didn't want to lose that year that I put in. But I didn't realize that because the people didn't explain that to me. And that's how it's really important to go with people who understand the process, who've been through the process and recently been through the process, or help somebody else recently through the process. Because if you don't know, you lose out. I lost out on $22,000 if I would have. That's what I didn't get for the 100% of that missed payments. I did get a lot of other money, but that's beside the point. That's what I look at. I went, okay, I was 3 points shy of 95, which would have been 100, and a PTSD would have put me over. If Go ahead.
It's a lot of money. I mean, between 90% and 100% is what,
$1,500?
Yeah, $1,500, depending on where what time frame it was. Yeah, so that's a lot of money. And then you think about, like, if here in Oklahoma, if for somebody who's 100%, you don't pay property tax, you don't pay sales tax, you can buy a car every 3 years and not have to pay tag, title, and tax.
Wow.
No hunting and fishing. You know, I sat down and figured it up. It's equivalent of $100,000 to $150, equivalent of having about $115,000 a year job. Plus, you know, my wife doesn't, have to pay certain medications and stuff. My dad was a Vietnam vet. He was a Marine, served in Vietnam. Passed away at 55. My mom is now 75 years old, so she doesn't pay property on the land, the farm here. She doesn't have to pay her, I think it's Medicare Plan B, so that saves her $400 a month. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when I tell guys, I don't, there's three things, when we talk about vets, there's those vets who, I served in the guard, or whatnot, but I really didn't serve. I don't feel like I served. And there's those guys who's, I served, but I got hurt, but I don't need those benefits because I never deployed anywhere. And there's those guys who I deployed, but I didn't see combat because I never was under fire. And then you got those guys who served in combat, but they came back home and, well, I didn't get shot up. I didn't lose a hand. I don't deserve it, and whatnot. And I'm like, so none of these guys think they want to apply or whatnot. But I tell guys, man, everybody, you raised your hand. Doesn't matter who you were, right? I said, you wrote a check. And this was a friend of mine told me this. He said, you wrote a check. And Uncle Sam takes that check and he never gives that check back. And it doesn't matter. Nobody knows whether they're going to be deployed. Nobody knows whether they're going to crawl in a burning helicopter or fall off a truck or going to get shot at. The deal is that you wrote the check. And I said, the reason you apply for benefits, and this is how I get a lot of Vietnam veterans to do it. I said, you're not going out to buy a Harley. You're not going to apply so you can have that new truck or boat. I said, you're applying for your family. We got to go do all the cool stuff. We got to fly around, and I was a golf battalion or golf company, 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines. We were a helo company. I got to do cool things, right? I got to see the world. I got to, I got to travel. I have friends that are mine for the rest of my life. They're closest things I have to a brother. I got to do those things. But the problem is that I also carry the baggage with that. But my family is the one who, my wife and my kids and my mom are the ones who pay interest on that baggage, right? They're the ones who get to pay interest on all of me paying for that. I said, so you apply for those benefits because of them, right? And so that really seems to change a lot how guys apply for them.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you get 100%, your spouse gets medical care covered.
Yes.
And 100% also includes dental.
Yes.
If I remember right.
It does.
And that's the reason I got tired of going back and there's guys who have PTSD from going back and getting denied, even though that they have real issues. And it's because no one's put it together for them, or even they haven't gotten diagnosed with it. And that's why Nexus letters are so important. I have two shoulders. My right shoulder I complained about when I got out. My left one I didn't. Well, I'm right-handed. I use my right one all the time. I don't always use my left one. So when I put through the package for this time, my left one got denied. It's exactly the same issue in both shoulders. So if I would have had a Nexus letter, I would have got my left shoulder included. And that's what people don't understand. A lot of these people who help you with your benefits, they try to write these different buddy letters and certain things. They kind of work. And they try to come up with Nexus letter. But an actual Nexus letter from a PA, a doctor, any of those things is the golden ticket, is exactly what you want. You don't want, am I wrong, Johnny?
No, you're correct. I think you're 100% right. I think you kind of go back to understanding why, guys, I think understanding what the VA process is. There's a couple of things. One, is there's four main pillars to it. One, guys got to have a problem now. And I think a lot of guys that don't realize, so it doesn't matter. You got to have documentation. Like, go to the doctor, and a lot of guys come back, they've become cops, firemen, whatever, and they don't go to the doc. Well, you got to go to the doc, get some documentation, because you got to have a problem now. If you go to a CMP examiner, and 90% of the CMP examiners are not prior service, they've never worn the uniform, they don't understand, so they're trying to apply everyday medicine to military medicine. And as you well as I know, you were a corpsman, they're not the same.
Nope.
And so, it doesn't mean that they don't want to help, because I think majority of them want to help, but they don't quite understand that. So, one, make sure you have a problem when you do it. Make sure you got some documentation from an outside provider, whether that is there's somebody. That's where that Nexus letter. A Nexus letter can say, hey, Ed's got a shoulder problem. He's got bilateral problems. He's had them from X, Y, and Z. And then that buddy letter can say, yeah, he's had these problems from whenever. So got a problem now. Where the buddy letter comes back in is that you had to have a problem then. Where can you show it in your medical record? And I was really bad, and happens in the military, is that I didn't document that. So now I write a lot of buddy letters for my guys that I served with. Yeah, we were here, and yeah, this happened, but we were in the field. It didn't get put in his medical record. And that's where that buddy letter, so we can go back and say, yeah, it happened then. So that's that second step. And then that's where there's three.
Johnny, what happens if you don't have those buddies?
Well, and
because here's a prime example. When I fell and I fractured a carpal bone in my left hand, that's how my shoulder on the left side got bad, is when I outstretched. That's how I hurt it. But I have documentation that shows that happened, and that can be connected to the shoulder. But what if I don't have a buddy to tell me to say this happened at that time, or that kind of stuff? It's in my medical record, that part of it, just not.
So if the shoulders, are you talking about? So if the shoulders in the medical record,
shoulders not, but the accident is,
then that's fine. The accident can be in there. You can say, hey, if you could take and say, that's where it goes back to the lay statement from the actual veteran works enough. You can say, hey, I have this, here's the accident, it's in my record, I had this is what happened. Then you can show that that's what happened. And then that's where you can have that lay statement, that Nexus statement from that other doctor that says, yeah, I've seen it, he has this problem now, he had a problem then. They want to see some chronicity, and that's where you're trying to find as many records as you can.
Right.
That's where that Nexus letter, because a lot of times that CMP examiner is not going to put something that happened 30 years ago or 60 years ago, the two and two together, if you don't have records in between. It's hard to put something that's 30 years in between if you didn't have records. And that's where, your wife, kids, brothers, family members, all of that stuff comes into play. And then once you can get that, and then that Nexus letter that I can write, or another doctor can write and say, hey, he had this, and then we write about all the things in between that happened. And that's when you start with that, but when you say that point of it happened, it either happened, it's in your medical record, or I had something like you were talking about, you had the shoulder was connected, right? But you're trying to say now my other shoulder's connected. So happens. What I see on that portion is people write in all of the time, and then they say that that's directly related to my military service. It's indirectly, it's not linear, right. It's down. And so what happens though is that when these other companies, which we won't say who they are, but they put it in and they all go linear. Well, they get denied because they say they're directly, and there's nothing in their medical record. Well, what they were is that because of you're altering your pressure, you're overusing my left shoulder to compensate for my right shoulder, or say my left knee. Now I've altered by biomechanical gait. Now my right knee is carrying all that pressure, or my right hip. So they don't put it in that way. Or you've got that football player who blew out his knee in high school and got it put back together. Then he comes in the service, or the guy who had flat feet. Now his feet is worse, or wearing combat boots, whatever. Now it's aggravated beyond the natural progression. And then the other aspect is, well, Camp Lejeune, water, Agent Orange, that stuff. And then the last thing, that fourth pillar, is guys don't, understanding that 38 CFR, what the 10%, the 20%, 30%, that's that fourth pillar. Understanding, like, one of the biggest things that I see, and you've heard this guy, where they went in, I had one this week where, the guy had gotten turned down. He was trying to get his knee upgraded, but in turn it got downgraded, and he didn't understand why. And if you read the knees, it says 10%. It says, it gives a range of motion, and right. It says does not have a medically prescribed device. And then the 20, 30, and 40% has a range of motion, pain, and has a medically prescribed device. And I see it all the time, where these guys have had, at one point in time, have had a knee brace, a cane, whatever, and that's how they got their 20 or 30%. And then when they will go back in to that doctor or that CMP examiner, then they don't have their cane, they don't have their knee brace. And the last thing on the CMP exam for a provider is, does he have a medically prescribed device? Cane, walker, knee brace, whatever. And they say no. Well, on the Raiders side, the first thing that they see is, does he have a medically prescribed device? Yes or no. And if it says no, then it goes over, and it's 10%. If he has any kind, it doesn't matter if he could look like a marionette, but he's getting 10%, and that's it. So
that's why I got 10%, because I have bone on my left knee, and they're like, the only brace there is whatever it is, and they go, you won't wear it. So
the unloader knee, unloader brace,
that you won't wear it. And so now I'm getting it through Kaiser, because I only got 10% for that knee, and that knee, they want me to have surgery on that knee. Even the doc at Kaiser said I have about another year or two, but at VA, my ortho was like, you need to get this replaced. Like, I don't want to get it replaced with the same thing I took care of people in 30 years ago in the Navy. It's the same thing. It's the same knee. Why do I want that knee? I want the new knees that are coming.
Yeah. And so that is why you got 10%, is you have no medically prescribed device. Now, once you get a knee brace, and you could go in, and now you can reapply. And so that's one of the things I hate about these VSO guys, or people who are helping guys, and they should say, hey, do you have a knee brace? No. Well, till you can get a medically prescribed device, there's no need in applying it. Or if we're trying to get you upgraded because your knee has obviously gotten worse, make sure you wear your knee brace or your back brace. Or if you wear shoe orthotics, wear your orthotic shoes. Don't come in wearing flip-flops.
Well, that's also like people who go through the VA to go through chiropractic care. And then they say, oh, my back's so much better. It's a 2 now. And next thing you know, they drop from 80 to 60% on their low back because their low back got better.
Well, they just something just changed with that in the last 60 days.
Okay.
It's called the Ingram. Let me tell you what is it. I have it right here.
Johnny, you're going to be on speed dial with me, just so you know.
Yeah, it's called Ingram and Collins. It just came out. The Veterans Courts, the Supreme Court came out and said it's basically a Veterans Court decision. They call it a Miller. I'm horrible with big names. ameliorative effect on musculoskeletal conditions being examined, such as 10 units, canes, acupuncture, physical therapy, etc., should not be used or considered for this question. So basically, this is only on for like medication. So does the veteran report
Oh, that's
taking?
the new thing. If you're taking medication, then it's better.
Yeah, and so or whatever. So
You
same
have to
thing.
use that. You have to, if you're taking medication, they have to take into effect how much that's making you feel better so you can do things.
So yeah, and some of the times, guys would come in, and the same way I had another guy come in this week, and they said he was getting better. Well, he was on so much Vicodin. Well, he was on enough Vicodin that he could probably done ballet. um and so they said, well, he's better. And I said, no. I said he's not better. I said he might have a little bit of better range of motion, but I said from the point when he came in to the point he's on now, I said he has increased the amount of he was on PRN hydrocodone. Now he's on scheduled daily Vicodin. He's on scheduled daily Robaxin. He's on amitriptyline for nerve pain. I said he's not better. There's no reason to take him down. So, and that goes back to guys who are doing it. And I come to this is the best way I describe guys when you're dealing with the VA Raiders. They don't care about the money. They could care less, but just think about, you've got some E6 staff sergeant, East first class in the Navy who's running the supply shop, right? And you got some E2. Now that E6 is never going to make E7. He's never going to be a gunny. He's never going to be a chief. He's never going to be a first class in the Army. And he knows it. He's going to, the rest of his 20-year career that's where he's going to be. So his whole life is that supply shop, his paperwork. He wants all about his paperwork. And so he's got some E2 who all he cares about is not getting his butt chewed, making sure he's got enough to drink beer and whatnot, and car payment because he lives in the barracks and whatnot. And so then here you are. You go in to turn in. Well, you're probably in the service. You remember the shelter half they used to have, the Marines used to have? It was a tent, 2-man tent. I'd get half and you'd get half. Snap it together. You had to have 3 tent poles, a rope, the shelter half, and 5 orange tent stakes. Now you go to turn it in. It doesn't matter what kind of shape it was, as long as you had all the pieces, right? But you go to turn it in, and he's counting it off. There's 3 tent poles. That rope used to be 3 foot long. Now it's a foot long. Looks like Wolverine or a bear just shredded that thing to pieces. But 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey man, hey doc, where's your 5th tent stake? Man, I don't know. Well, I need 5 tent stakes. I'm like, dude, you got 10,000 orange tent stakes back there. And he's like, well, he wants, that staff sergeant, he wants 10,005, not 10,004. And at Lejeune, man, it was about 15, 16 miles out to Main Side to go buy a $5 orange tent stake. All they care about is that paperwork, just like what we were talking about a while ago. Does he have a knee brace or no knee brace? And that's what they care about. So it's all about orange tent stakes. So I tell guys, when you start thinking about this stuff, make sure your paperwork is all together there. Make it easy on these guys. Like when you're submitting something, submit paperwork all for the back, all for the knee, silo it, right? And if there's a paperwork that has a knee and a back, make 2 copies, one for each side, each way, write it out, because these guys all have quotas too. And they're going to send if they have to go look through it, like the average pieces of paper that I see are roughly 1,800 to 3,500 documents in a veteran record that the C&P examiner has to look at. So if I don't have to go through that, if somebody's put it all together in like, I can look at it and I can see there's a back package and there's a knee package, and man, it goes fast. But if I have to go looking through it, and I'm a veteran and I'm a corpsman and I know how to read the old 600s and stuff. Most of these guys don't. A lot of stuff just gets denied because guys don't have time. They got 15 minutes to go through somebody's record.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
And I told another PA who was a corpsman and became a PA, and he was putting in his package, and then we were helping him out. And I said, yeah, to connect it with him, I said, it's like talking to an MA. He started laughing, because MAs that's not their job. Their job is to take your blood pressure, your temperature, your thing, and get you to the next room. That's all they do. They have no idea what you're trying to explain to them. So you're trying to explain stuff to someone that doesn't understand it. They don't have time. You got to put it completely together for them so they can quickly go through it, say yes. Because if they have to take any time at all, I'm in the mortgage industry. That's where I come from. Back in the day, underwriters, we would color code our folders when we put in for wholesale lenders. So all of ours were one color. So the underwriters could see our packages, and then they would pull them out of the pile. It would different colors, so they knew it was us, and they would go through our stuff first and get approved first because they knew it was easy. They could go through 5 of ours in the time it takes them to go through 1 of somebody else's, and that's
yeah. Yeah, and that's how. So when I'm working with my stuff, that's how I put it together. Make it easy. The Staples Easy button, and doing it that way is exactly what you're talking about. And one of the things is that I've seen the letters. I've read what they send people, and they say, "Well, don't bring your records. You don't need them." I always
CMP appointments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now it's like this. It's a 50-50 draw, especially if you have anything new or whatnot. And a lot of times you don't know what you're going for. So if you got a knee brace or a cane or whatever, I'm not telling you to lie or anything, but if you have it and you use it, bring it. Right. But I always say, take your records, and it's like a portfolio. Your military, VA, disability, every letter, everything you have that you've ever gotten, and every record you have, should be siloed, built for knees, back, however you've gotten it. And then every time you get a new doctor note, anything else, medical records, you put it in there, and you oldest to newest. And then that way you bring it with you no matter what, and then that way, if I'm having to look for something, you can go, no, it's right here, doc. Now, some of the providers that I know out there's a couple companies. There's more. So there's VES, there's Loyal, there's Lidos has a company, and there's one other one that has switched names. And it just depends on which one it is, and it depends on the guy sitting there. If it's a guy like me who's prior service and understands it, or some of these people have kids that are in the military. They're like, yeah, let me see it, and then I can go, yeah, and they'll say, or it's not in here. Say, hey, make sure you get it up, uploaded. Great. Some of them say, no, I can't look at it. Well, that's fine. Great. But the deal is, it's better to have all of that and put it together. The other thing is that you've taken ownership. You should know your record. You should know that I was seen on July 1998, or May 10th, 1996. I was saw for burns on my arm, my hands, for this, whatever. You should know every date that you had something happen. That way, what's going on, right? And so the more when you go in there, don't say, well, I don't know. Never show up and say, well, I take meds and I don't know. Take ownership of what you're doing. Because if you don't, it's like anything else. It's like your portfolio. It's your investment. It's your bank account. It's your life. And I always say that vets we're our own worst enemy. Sometimes we drink too much, we smoke too much, we eat too bad, we don't take good care of ourselves. And sometimes, guys come in expecting stuff, but if we take a little time, we educate ourselves, somebody educates us and has conversations like me and you are having right now, and go, oh, so I'm dealing with some asshole staff sergeant who just wants his paperwork. Well, what paperwork do I need? Okay, so I know I got to have 5 orange tent stakes. Well, what are those orange tent stakes? Well, I've got a 168-page document that I've created of orange tent stakes. And we write it up and we work on it. And we put it in the package. There's companies out there that there are times you need an attorney. You're dealing with, Camp Lejeune, some of these
Right.
others. Sometimes guys, talking to a guy today who got diagnosed with MS, that the VA missed it for multiple years, and he kind of missed that 7 window, but they were looking at it. So he needs probably an attorney. But I mean, a lot of guys say, well, I want them to do it because I don't want nothing to do with it. Well, that's on you too.
But back to your whole thing about the CMP people, they're not your advocate. And as long as you understand that, there are a couple. I had one that was really good, but the rest of them, they were, one was a VA person. They were trying to, I don't want to say trick me, but what people don't understand is VA pays you where pain starts. And I had one guy said, raise your arm over your head. I go, do you want me to raise my arm to where pain starts, or do you want me to go all the way through it? Oh, no, just raise it to where pain starts. And you ask them the question, right? I had one lady who wanted me to move my knee a certain way with the bone on bone, and just won't do it. She wanted me to reach back. I go, there's no way I can do that. And they're trying to, and someone else said, if you got back pain and you bend over to take your shoes off, well, really, do you have back pain? Well, how do you, there's certain things that you shouldn't do. But again, if you go back to the whole thing where VA pays you where pain starts, then you understand your limitations.
And that's it. And I hate that. I hate that aspect on the providers. And that goes back to, there's a lot of people. I know some guys who truly believe that veterans don't deserve their benefits. And I had one guy who questioned me about it and questioned how I got to my answer. And I said, have you ever carried a rifle? And he said, no. I said, you ever humped a rucksack? And he said, no. I said, you ever worn the uniform? And he said, no. I said, you got a medical license? And he said, no. I said, well, I'll tell you what, I can answer all 4 of those questions with a yes. I said, when you get to answer yes to 2 of those, I said, you come back and you talk to me. But until then, I said, that's my answer and I'm not changing it. And they said, well, you have to. I said, no, I don't have to. I said, that's my answer. And I said, my medical license says I do not have to answer. That is my medical opinion. Now, you don't have to like it. That's your prerogative, but I'm not changing it. But there are people out there who really think that we're trying to get over.
Right.
But we are so programmed. Like for me, my dumb ass, 2 years ago, I did the Baton Death March with the 9 other Tillman scholars. That's 26 miles to the New Mexico desert, 13 hours and 3 minutes with a 30-pound rucksack, with a broke foot, right? They're like, what the hell? I said, well, I'm going to hurt one way or the other. So I might as well hurt doing cool shit. So the deal is that we're so programmed, vets are so programmed and ingrained in doing when it hurts. So like you said, you bend over to take off your shoes. Well, I got to take my shoes off every day.
Right.
So, but when you're in there, they think, well, you can't have back pain if you took your shoes off. And we're like, so when you're doing these exams, you have to be prepped a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you also bring in your DBQ, bring in everything that you wrote about your stuff. And they ask you questions, you can just read it or you can offer it to them. It's right here. Do you want to read it? So that you don't forget anything, because this is all new to you. Not everybody's going to be a corpsman going into these appointments like myself or you. They have no idea. I mean, I have friends of mine who are 100% and they're the worst when it came to going to the appointments because they're infantry. They're not understanding the medical part of it and what they need to be careful of and how to explain it. And it's always your worst day, not your best day. We're already bad enough on our own where we say we can just deal with it because we've been dealing with it forever.
And that's it. And so what I always try to do is, that's what I like when I do a Nexus letter. I always try to do a DBQ. So those guys have that. And so they understand what they're going to get when they get there and what they should be getting when they get there. When I do a DBQ, I do one every 15 minutes, but there's some of these guys that do them every 7 minutes. I personally don't know how you can do a DBQ in 7 minutes to do a full exam of a knee or a leg. Some of them, yeah.
Are you talking about for CMP appointment? Or are you talking about your own? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, CMP. Yeah, when I'm doing a CMP, I don't know how you can get through it. Sleep apnea, something like that, or hypertension. Yeah, quick answer the questions and move on. But yeah, so you have to understand and know what you're doing and why you're doing it. If you don't understand it, and that's where I try to when guys are doing it, that's why taking the time to get a good Nexus letter and DBQ, and not just getting a Nexus letter from a doctor, getting a Nexus letter and DBQ from somebody who understands the VA process.
Oop, there goes the camera.
Oh, there went the camera. Sorry.
That's all right. It's like Blair Witch Project all over again. Not everybody gonna understand that one, but okay.
Yeah. So
what you're saying is somebody who understands the VA, understands everything about it. It's not so it needs somebody and that's why a lot of doctors will say, I don't want to write one, or they'll say, write it for me and bring it in and I'll sign it. But it doesn't mean it has all the information you need for the background of it. And that's like the one for PTSD. A lot of the VA docs, your provider, the psychiatrist won't do them.
No. And they won't. The VA says they can do it, but they won't do it because they are. So I've got good friends who work at the VA. And it is that the VA says out here in big, bold letters, yeah, they can write you one, right? Because everybody says, well, they say right here you can write it, but in the background they're saying no, you can't write one.
Right.
They highly discourage it. They don't want it anywhere around where they can do that.
No, because then they would do it for everybody and everybody get PTSD. Right. I mean, because if they wrote the truth, I mean, that's why. So I know we talked about it before. I found places where psychiatrists who will write them for you, for a certain dollar amount. They'll research your stuff and then write them for you. My person who'll do it will do it for me, and she'll do it for other people, but she wants like $2,200 for it. It's ridiculous.
Well, I've got a good team member. So we've got a pretty good team that I've put together. That guys, he's retired. He worked for the VA. He actually worked for the Veterans Readjustment Center. He was a former corpsman. Went back to school. He's at LPC. And so he can write the Nexus letters and stuff. And we've got a really good team where we do it. It's just getting slow. A couple of us doing it around some other stuff we're doing. We just started this week. We launched a program where we're doing wellness for veterans and first responders, where we can do the terzipatide and stuff at a discounted rate for veterans and first responders. We have a friend of ours who's a former Ranger, owns a pharmacy. So we got that. And then one of my buddies he's the former IDMT, who does a lot of it. He's been sick this week, been in the hospital. So we're a little bit behind on that, but we're just now getting things ramped up, going again. But there's a lot of work that goes into it, but
Johnny, we got to go. Yeah, we got to go. Just because I have one more after this, I would stay on here for another hour with you if possible, because you're giving such great information for veterans. Now, we didn't even get into your books or any other stuff you do. How do people find you if they want to get a hold of you for some help?
Always johnnygilpen.com. You can find me, but Johnny at johnnygilpen.com is the easiest way to get a hold of me. That's JOHNNIE at johnnygilpen.com.
That's Gilpen. He did spell out his Johnny, but not his last name. So I made sure.
Thanks. Sorry about that.
No, I'll put it in the notes and underneath also. So don't worry about that.
Yeah. And we're fixing to launch our own podcast talking about mental health, and maybe I bring you on and we'll finish this up.
Well, I'm going to have you back again. What are you talking about? We're going to have part 2.
Okay. Sounds
once
great.
I get more information because I want to go more deep next time on the whole CMP Nexus letters, even more, so people understand it more than just your journey. So again, Johnny, thank you so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate you being here.
Oh, Ed, I loved it. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.